Hi, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today for the Mountaineer Military Museum webcast. My name is Sandy, and you're watching Ancestry Roads. Ancestry Roads is stories about Appalachia and Appalachians, and I am thrilled to introduce to you our guest today, Barbara McVaney. And I'll give you a little bit of history about how I met Barb and a little bit of information about a big surprise that I found along the way as I toured the museum. So help me welcome Barb to the webcast. Thanks, Barb.
Thanks for inviting me. I'm so excited.
Now let's get this right off the bat. What is behind you?
Oh, okay. Right behind me is the 𝗪𝗏𝗯𝗰𝗵𝗶, M-U-T-T, Military Utility Tactical Truck. And in layman's term, we just call it the Jeep.
The Jeep. That makes sense. And I know that there's some other assorted items behind you, and I just want to let everybody know that we have some pictures to show you. I cannot show you everything that is in this museum because it's over 2,000 square feet, and you might think that that's small, but you guys have really packed it in a lot. So it's definitely not small. It is packed in, and you have over 1,300 photos displayed.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Can you imagine that? I mean, so if everybody thinks about how big your home is or that you're living in now, and if you've got 2,000 square feet, try putting 1,300 photos in a Jeep. And there along with some other things too. So I think it's really amazing what you have. Let me bring up your webpage real quick. So again, this is the Mountaineer Military Museum in Western West Virginia. And the very interesting thing about that is if you know me and if you've seen anything that I've done in the past year, especially, you will know that two of my brothers were born in Western West Virginia, lived in Western West Virginia before my dad took them on the Hillbilly Highway. So this was really cool to me to come to Weston and look at a bunch of different things going on, including this museum. And when you see this museum, you're going to think, wow, this is kind of small, but it's not. It's got a jam-packed information. Here's a little bit of view of the photos. And these photos come to you from the family or individuals, right?
Yes. Mostly families.
And a little bit of gallery. Now, there are some West Virginia facts, and I do want to get into that, but I think that we really can't get into it until we understand the purpose and the reason why this museum even exists. And I will tell you guys, this is pretty important. If you are a military family, such as my family is a military family, or if you have military spouses, children, whatever it may be, you will understand Barbara's husband's promise. So could you tell us, what is that promise made?
The promise is a silent conversation between my husband and a friend that he lost during the Vietnam War. My husband grew up in a little coal mining community just a little bit north of us, in Clarksburg, Harrison County, West Virginia. And in the early years of the Vietnam War, my husband and a couple of his friends were drafted into service. The draw sent my husband to Germany and two of his friends to Vietnam. And by the time that whole situation was over, my husband's the only one who came home. He had done his service, was back working in the factories, and he gets a call one day from the mother of one of his friends who had just been killed in Saigon, and she's asking my husband to be a pallbearer. He stands at our national cemetery and he looks down at his friend and he says, "I promise I'll never let anyone forget. This museum is the promise."
And I will say that Barb has shared, we're not going to go into a lot of detail with this, but Barb has shared with myself and my husband when we visited, and my uncle who visited, that this is definitely a love and a passion. And if you ever visit, you will know it is. That's guaranteed. But it's also a struggle because you were kind of self-funded.
totally self-funded, other than, some, people who have kind, wonderful hearts and see what we do and appreciate what we've done and the years and the efforts. And they, we have fundraising efforts, and a few people who annually or monthly will send us a donation and things. We've tried, of course, tons of yard sales and raffles. And we've had some motorcycle rides and things like that, and to try to support.
I will say too, you do have some people donate items that you can raffle off. So I love seeing that. If I can get my producer to find the Facebook page, I think is mostly where you post on social media as well. Yeah. But I love seeing little items come up, because they're so unique and different, and they're coming from the heart. Somebody is either found something about it to give to you, or it's from their collection and they're giving it to you and asking you to raffle it so you can keep this museum going. You might think, okay, so what do you need to keep the museum going? And we're not going to talk dollars and cents here, but I just want everybody to think about, we are talking that this museum is in the heart of West Virginia. It's central West Virginia. It's in the heart. If you've looked at any weather map, you'll notice that it gets cold there. So, you got to keep the heat on or the air conditioning on, and you got to take care of the elements inside the museum to protect everything that's been donated. And when I say everything donated, I'm going to put you on the spot, because I'm not sure if you know this or not. And you can guess how many different, not the photos, but how many different articles or items have been donated, would you say, to the museum?
Probably like 95% since we've opened. When we first opened in the front of the museum, the little schoolhouse, it was totally everything that we had, that my husband had collected. And then as people heard about us and they would bring in things and said, we tell the Mrs. Griever story, who walked in with a little shadow box of her brother's Purple Heart and his little pen and his patch from World War II, and said, "Can you honor my brother?" And it's like, well, that just opened the door, and we can't say no.
No, you can't. And I want to mention, you just reminded me of something really, really important too. So I want to mention that for those of you that are joining us that are part of WikiTree, we just had a national global symposium, and one of the speakers said, what happens to my items that are so important to me? I have either no kids, or my kids don't want them, or I've got no family. And you just explained exactly what happens. People come in with this collection and it's dear to them, and they're like, please, can you take it? And you can't say no.
I can't say no. It hurts my heart when they tell us, it's like, well, we have no children, no family. Yeah. The children, that the kids we have don't care. Okay. And it's like, if you don't take it, it's going to be trashed, and that hurts my heart. So we'll take that. I have 3 storage buildings that I still haven't sorted through in our 17 years here in Weston. And we'll go through those items, and we'll pull out things that we need to add to the collection. I mean, it's just amazing, some of the things that we find in these boxes and bins that we receive.
It is really amazing. And I want to point out too that the museum is generally closed during the winter, but you can always contact them. And when you contact them on the website, and the website should be at the top and also of this chat, and also in the description, and my producer will put it in there as well. But when you contact them, you're actually contacting Barb. Trust me on this.
I answer all the phones.
You do. And as most of you know, I recently did a 2-week adventure trip, discovery trip to Appalachia. And of course I was going to Weston for a couple of reasons. It's where my brothers were born, and my family still lives in family still lives in Weston as well. And then the Lewis Bennett Memorial Library, if you want to learn more about military in West Virginia, Lewis Bennett was the only, I know that it was World War I, and I want to say ace of West Virginia. Yes. And there's a display as well in your museum about him, and his mother donated their house to become the library for this town. So West Virginia, I grew up always knowing West Virginia was very military centric. It was, I'm going to just say this for those of you that are in here for genealogists, just so you know, the reason why I'm saying this is because when coal mines start leaving and there are no jobs, the military was always an option. And I will guarantee you this because that's what happened to my dad. My dad went in as a reserves. So you start to see some military really increase within families, especially I would say starting with the Korea War and then going on to even present day. And as Barb said, we got to honor them. This is a promise that I know your husband made, but it's now become a promise that both of you have made for all West Virginians.
Yes. And we tell people it's like every little town should have some place. You drive around through any little town, there's empty store buildings. Like every place, every little town should have a place to honor their military.
They really should, and it's kind of what we do, as a country as well. I know there's some that might not, but it is mostly what we do as a country. So for those of you that are watching, I know that I saw Germany and Ireland. So for those of you watching, we generally do things like this. We take in all the information we can and all the items and the trinkets. And I don't want to really call them trinkets, but some of them are, because you had little toys that came out and things in Cracker Jacks that came out. But you have some serious items that are donated. So let me run you through a couple questions here. What item would you say makes people cry the most?
One item?
Yeah, or photo. Item or photo, anything makes, or story if there makes people cry the most?
I don't know that I can answer that. I've been asked that before, like a favorite piece or whatever. I don't know if you remember the reflection room.
That's what I was going to say.
That's the place. And that has been a room of healing and a lot of tears shed. I keep a box of tissues back there all the time. And I've been asked to sit with veterans and even family members and hold their hand and to cry with them.
Yeah. And I think it's important to really say this again. So this is a museum. And as I go through this museum, I have not been in the military, but as I've gone through this museum, I'm looking at it from a different perspective than somebody who was in the military. So you're going to find that this particular museum is like it's jam-packed with every, war and everything that we have. There's going to be PTSD. There's going to be memories come back. And the fact that you have a room that is, off to the corner where, you could just enter, come and go as you need is pretty important. Let me show you a couple pictures. So this flag has a great story to it. And I when I was there, Barb mentioned to me, if you look to the right, that looks really round. That hole. So tell us the story of the flag.
You're talking about the holes in the flag?
Yeah.
Yeah. That ensign is actually it's a ship's ensign, an ensign for a flag that flew on a ship. That's a Union ensign, and it's dated 1861, which is takes you to the firing at Fort Sumter prior or kind of started the Civil War. So the whole, I kind of tell school kids when they come, you just see like the big Confederate, because Sumter was a Confederate fort, and the ensign was on a Union ship. So you kind of see the big old Confederate cannonball going through that, and the rest of that is just its age. It's 162 years old, so it's kind of.
It's a grand old flag, and I need to let everybody know too that these type of items, if if Barb was going to go to an auction and try and buy something like this, it's out of the range costly. This actually came because another museum had to close down, right?
Yes, we acquired that because of a state-run museum had lost its funding, and by the laws of nonprofit, your items have to go to another nonprofit organization. We were acquainted with the director at this museum from a time that he spent in Weston, and so when they went to catalog all the artifacts, the farm implements that was in that little place went to the farm museum, the coal mining things went to the coal mining museum, and that gentleman told the governor, says, I know where your military stuff's gonna go. And
That's so
so
cool.
they cataloged it, the governor signed it, and they just drove up this big van that was full of wonderful, wonderful pieces.
I mean, these are just treasures that a museum like the Smithsonian you could probably go out and buy, but to have this in your town is really special. Let me move on. Okay, so this was one that my husband was fascinated by because he started talking to my brother about this, and they started chatting about this. Now, I'm sorry that it's not blown up bigger, but could you tell us what this is in the story about this?
Okay, that's a really wonderful story, and that's actually a piece. I say it's a piece of Western history.
It is.
In 1945, a gentleman named Mr. Crawford, and that's the only name that I have connected with that. I'm sure the locals will know more about that, but he created this piece, and up at the top of that, it has the number for our Weston Moose Lodge. So on those shells, that the shape like shells, have the names of the members of the Weston Moose Lodge who went to service in World War II. And then the 3 silver spent casings, spent shells, are names of the membership who were killed during World War II. This gentleman made this piece for the Weston Moose Lodge, as I said, and we were told, I'm pretty sure that he did another piece for our fire department.
And this is pretty cool. As I have many, brothers. I have a lot of brothers, but this is the one that is into genealogy and the moose, and he goes to the Moose Club in Weston whenever he visits. So this was like it. It just started a conversation between our family. And the reason why I bring this up, you never know when you go to a place, and I recommend that everybody, when you travel, pick some place that's different to you, and you go into it and you are always amazed how you connect with another family member or friend. And this was it for us. Besides, this is one of the brothers that was born in Weston. He just was over the moon. He was thrilled with this. And I don't believe the magazine is in circulation anymore, but that's kind of also how he recommended I come here, because he used to write for a magazine and wrote about your museum. Okay.
Oh,
Now, this is fascinating to me because the museum is broken down into eras, into wars, things like that. So as you travel through the museum, if you looked at the video at the very beginning and you go down that hallway of photos, that was kind of like, as soon as you open the door to the museum, that's what you see. And you're walking down. And I thought that the very front part of this museum, that was it. And I was assuming the back was going to be full of, secret, private stuff that you're still looking at, archive stuff. No, as soon as you go into the second part of this museum, right to the right, we get Rosie. I love Rosie.
Me too. I love Rosie's too. My husband did, after making his promise, he started collecting things, and he just picked up all the military stuff he could find here, there, and whatever. But when I married into the I thought, you know what? What about the services and sacrifices from the folks who were left at home? So of course, nurses were, everywhere, and then they had, the Army Nurse Corps. So we have World War I, World War II nurses there in that collection. But my Rosies is like, golly gee, the men and just left their homes and their jobs and signed up to go to service, especially after Pearl Harbor. And the ladies just stepped right into the factories and took their jobs and did their jobs well.
And I'm looking at this. I'm looking at the uniform. So let's take the nurse. I'm looking at the nurse's uniform, and you can't see it, but there are a lot more as well listed there. And then if you look at the picture on the left, you've got the larger blown up picture. I just want to remind everybody that this is a self-funded museum, and I'm blown away by the quality of what you put together for the vignettes. I mean, it's just amazing. You feel immersed as you go in and see. And for the nurses, you can see over on the right-hand side a lot of pictures that are there. And I believe, is that Miss Jean? Was she a nurse as well?
Miss 𝗪𝗲𝗯𝗰𝘀𝘀?
Yeah.
No, she's a Rosie. Her picture's in the display.
And let me show you guys something real quick. And again, this is on 𝗪𝗪𝗃𝘀𝘀. So what we did is when I literally was at the museum and I took my phone and I was taking pictures and I was sending them over to the Appalachia project that's on 𝗪𝗪𝗃𝘀𝘀, saying, can somebody please do some profiles for these wonderful people? And of course, this was some of the ones that I worked on. And I just really want to show this because this is a kind of fun one for me, because I know that Karen, who created this profile, is in the audience. And I just wanted to give a shout out to her, because every time I throw something like this, she's like always volunteering. And this is special to her because her family is from Upshur County, just the county over, just a few steps away. And she did a really, really great job. What we are wanting to do is kind of partner with the museum. And you'll notice that we have this little link here where we can help document the 1,300 people that are photographs are in this museum, because when we're gone, who's going to tell their story? So if we don't document their stories now, then we'll just have, okay, they were born, they married, and they died. And we'd like a little bit more than that. So this kind of just shows you a little information about her. And this is a little snippet from the museum. The other reason that I want to point this out is for somebody that also is in the audience. I noticed Irish John is in the audience. I wanted to point out that she is from Ireland.
West Virginia.
I was going to say, I'll give him a few seconds to see, because we laugh, John and I laugh about Ireland, West Virginia. So this is, and if you know me, you know my uncle, you've seen my uncle before. He lives in Ireland, West Virginia. So that is kind of our connection again with this. And he went to the museum with us. We were kind of surprised. We thought that he'd do his chores around the house. And another connection is that my uncle was in the same school district as you, Barb, right? So you worked together too.
Yes.
Now let me move on. This one, of course, again, if you know my husband, you know he's going to show a Marine. But the reason why this is so interesting is the story you gave about this particular photo on the left.
Okay, that's Sergeant Marty, Sergeant Marty 𝗩𝗪𝗪𝗀𝗃𝗃, a wonderful museum friend, and did, I think, 4 tours of Vietnam, and that is not his original uniform and medals. He had difficulty after he came back home. I'm trying to be careful. He had difficulty when he came back home, and one evening he just took all of his gear out in the backyard and set it on fire, and just.
But and that is so common that I will tell you, as a wife of a Marine and then also as a daughter-in-law of a Marine, that they love. I can only attest to Marines. My dad was in the Army a little bit. I can only attest to Marines. They are so gung-ho. They would never do anything against even a glove that they're wearing. But the PTSD is so strong with some that when something like that happens to somebody, that it's a sign that we need to reach out as well. So that's the other reason that I love this museum, because we mentioned the reflection room. But you also, like you said, he's a friend of the museum.
Yes.
And this is a way that he can still be honored. And I understand that when you were doing the installation for this, he was there?
He was there. He going back a while passed after he had that incident, and he realized later, he goes, I shouldn't have done that. I need to be available to tell people and help people get through such things. So he went out and he purchased all new uniforms, all new medals. I mean, that's all new stuff. And when he brought that in for us, he sat in his wheelchair and he gave orders and directed how the gloves had to be and how the seam in the pants had to be and stuff. So Sergeant Marty took led the charge on that one. Yes.
And I was going to say, if that doesn't define a Marine, I don't know what does, because that is true. I mean, those stripes have to be exactly where they need to be, and the hands have to be positioned exactly. Yes. I mean, everything. So when we looked at this, I kind of went through and was looking at this one and the two to the right of him as well. But when you started telling the story, my husband's like, of course, of course. So, again, I wanted to bring up this because I think this gentleman is just an amazing guy to be able to come through some fog. And if you see a vet out there that might be going through some fog, reach out to him. And that's worldwide. That's not just something that we have here in the States. So that's worldwide. Okay, so let's go to I don't know why, but my producer really liked these photos. And I know that he kept asking me about the dots, but I don't know if that's why he liked the photos or not. But can you tell us something about this?
Well, he probably liked it because the lady is in a Marine uniform. But I believe that's the Riley family, brother and sister. And we didn't have, when the family brought those pictures into us, they didn't have a picture of young Mr. Riley in uniform. And I can't remember, the narrative talks about the battle that he was in, lost in, I believe, and I can't remember how closely they had enlisted together, but we have them together, brother and sister.
And the family came in. The family said, I want these to be here, to be recognized as well. I know that you have, and I cannot remember their name. I'm trying to look it up, but I cannot remember their name. It was on, is this at the front of the museum or at the very end?
The Rileys are right as you come in the door.
So at the end of this particular hallway is an entire family, I think, listed, right? If I've got that right.
The Taylor family, Mrs. Taylor and 7 sons.
Yes. Can you tell us a little bit about the Taylors?
The Taylor family, in the publication Lewis Countyans in World War II, first volume, there's and I think it's right in the center of the publication, is a picture of this lady and her 7 sons. And during World War II, she sent 7 sons to World War II. And of course, all, they went to different branches and did different things, had different jobs. All 7 came back home, but she's listed as Lewis County's wartime mother.
Can you imagine? I mean, sending 7 off to wars, I can tell you right now, sending mine, just one, would be It would be tough. It would definitely be tough. And let me see. I think I've got one more, and then we're going to switch over to a different slide. So, can you tell us a little bit about the flag on the right?
Okay, that's a big banner. A lot of folks are familiar with what they call the in-service banners, and they're just a little single flag-looking banner that people would hang in their windows. The blue stars represent the members of how many members of their family are in service. The gold stars represent those who were killed during that service. But the big banner was it's unique. I've never seen another one like it, but those were made specifically for community centers or churches or factories. And so say that that banner would hang in a community center or in a church, would represent the number of people from that community who were in service. And then you see the 3 gold stars at the top. It means that community lost 3 of its members.
And this was World War II?
World War II, yes.
World War II. So that's really interesting. I don't remember seeing this, but
I've never seen a large one like that before. I had lots of the little ones, but when that one arrived, it's like that's awesome.
That really is, and I guess that kind of shows the community kind of coming together as well to let everybody know that they support not only the service men and women that went, but the families.
Yes.
So
that's centerpiece primarily in our home front section. It's huge.
And then I think that my producer put together the picture on the left because it's so many different items that he's showing. I wanted to show you.
I had to get close to see what that was. That is our window for our prisoner of wars, our POW MIAs. So yes, we have POWs listed, represented there, World War IIs. There's a gentleman in the gold frame that was a survivor of the Bataan Death March. And then down in the lower left is the 𝗪𝗪𝗀𝗀𝗃 story from Vietnam, and I don't know, that's just a huge story and a personal one for me. I was a senior. If you see the picture of him and the nurses, and he's bending down, kissing the ground when he was brought home, repatriated. Wow. I saw that actually happen on TV. I was a senior in high school, and our social studies teacher said, "Put the books away. We're watching history today." And
wow.
Yeah, and so he turned. I mean, he would never turn on the TV, but this was huge. And when I saw, it's like that's just a personal story to me, so it's awesome.
And that is a powerful statement. Put the books away. We're going to watch history today. I think that all of us, if you think back when you were in school, when they would roll in the TV, in that cart, that noisy cart and everything, that was rare.
And Mr. Kern is still living. He's in a nursing facility in West Virginia.
That's amazing. And I should say that when you go through the museum, there are still living people that are displayed. They want their information there. They don't want to be forgotten, and they want the information there. Their family wants them recognized as well. So I'll keep that in mind. I want to show you again some video from the video that we had. And this is what I was talking about, that I don't know if it will play. Let me see if I can get it to play. This is kind of what I was talking about. As soon as you open the door, this is what you see. And when I said 1,300 photos, this is part of how they're being seen. And all the way throughout, and up top, and all the way throughout. Let me go ahead and click the next one. This is a different view of the nurses display that we showed earlier. And on the left, you see the greatest generation. This kind of shows you how everything is sectioned kind of by era and by war. But this is the middle picture. that is interesting. People are donating their relatives or ancestors' flags to the museum.
Yes, yes. Burial flags. It's the big statue you see there in the middle. That is Sergeant Valor. He's our museum mascot, and he has a very special story for us. But yes, he is there to guard our burial flags, and we it's just a way family says there's no one to pass that down to. Will you make sure that they're remembered? So of course.
I mean, that's just amazing to me when you think about it. Like the flag behind me is a really nice cloth flag. It's not a burial flag, but I do have my dad's burial flag. And to think that it would go into a state sale, or it was in a box and they looked through it, didn't know what it is, and it'd go in the trash or the dump. It makes me a little ill at first to think of that, but I'm not here anymore. So where's it going to go? And the fact that you're taking in as a museum and archiving and keeping these flags, and not only is the museum doing this, but you're making sure we know who they are. You could do something probably artistry and have the flags and everything, but no, you're preserving each one individually so they're still recognized. Okay, so tell us about Sergeant Valor, because it's a cool story.
Okay. Well, I love Sergeant Valor. So I was first introduced to Sergeant Valor. We were on Thanksgiving vacation at Virginia Beach, and I'm driving down the highway, and I just look over to this little shopping plaza, and I see this big statue sitting on the sidewalk in front of this store, and I pulled across like 5 lanes of traffic to get over there, and just fell in love with him when we saw him. If you look real closely, kind of zoom up on him, you can see his mouth open. He's holding his weapon, and he's like calling the charge, storming the beaches. And as I said, I just fell in love with him. And so I went into the store with the media pack. I always travel with those, and introduced myself, told him what we did, and I said, well, we'll come back and we'll talk about that. So the following day, we went back to the store, my husband and I, and just fell in love with him. And we made arrangements to have, did the purchase, made arrangements to have him sent back to West Virginia, delivered to us. And that was in the fall and winter of 2008. In 2009, we had a contest with the school children, all the elementary schools, middle school, high school, to give us a name and tell us why you want to name him that way. So about a month went by. We got all those applications. We got a panel of veterans together, and they went through and read all these little applications. And of course, we had Grandpa and Uncle Bob and things like that. One of the names was Sergeant Get Her Done, and that that got a chuckle, but it just didn't seem right. Yeah. So at the time, the veterans chose the application by an 8th grader from Robert Bland. It's just the next block over, and the student's name is Dalton Wright. He was an 8th grader at the time, and he wrote that his name should be Sergeant Valor because it represents all soldiers that showed courage in all battles, something similar to that. And that's
his name.
He got his name. His image is, we've had his image copyrighted, so it's on file in the Library of Congress. So the sole possession of the Mountaineer Military Museum. He's on our hats and our shirts and our patches, and he represents us well.
He does. He really. It was really cool to see him. And I think at one time, didn't you say that somebody was taking him out for parties or something like that?
Oh yeah. So there's some damage on his forearm that's holding the front part of the weapon. The shop owner said that he tried to sell him, and he wasn't going. So he would rent him out to retirement parties and things. So he says, I'm pretty sure there was a drunk general that bumped into him and broke his arm. So you can kind of see where Sergeant Valor's arm's been patched and things like that, which kind of helped him reduce the price for us whenever we made that purchase.
And, you know, if you're in battle, you're going to come away with something.
Oh,
okay.
Everybody has scars.
They do. These are very powerful to me. Okay, so these are the ones I picked. These are very, very powerful. We've already talked about the flag. So we talked about the flag earlier. The picture down in the bottom right, I'm just going to talk about it real quick about why it was powerful to me. You have these two guys. And if this isn't typical World War II, this just is. And if you have a love of animals and dogs, and as most of you know, mine is usually back behind me for every webcast sound asleep. So I just thought that this brought a little different humanity to war than what we normally see. Normally we see them all formal or, you know, working or something. And this just brought a little bit of informity to it. So it's something that we're familiar with. That was kind of why I included that one. Now, the bottom picture, if you go anywhere near West Virginia, go to Weston and go to this museum for this, because this blew me away. This was fantastic. This is a very large display. It doesn't look it. This is not dollhouse. This is real life display, and this was actually like Mom, Pa, you know, listening to a speech. And which speech is it?
The broadcast that's coming across the radio in the corner that you get to listen to with Mom and Pop is President Roosevelt's speech to Congress declaring war on Japan the day after the bombing of Pearl Harbor. I call it the Day of Infamy speech, and everybody's familiar with that. Yeah. But it's the entire broadcast, and it was meant to be. That had to be the piece that was playing on the radio at the time.
And when she says playing on the radio, she's not kidding. It is, you stand there, you listen to the speech with these two people. It's amazing. You were transported, because like I said, these are life size. The room is life size. You're transported back to that day and time when you hear it and you see them in a typical environment. And you know, to me, this reminds me of my grandmother's house in West Virginia. So this is very typical for me. And I really connected with it because of that. And I could see them. Now, they might have children or they might have grandchildren, who knows, that are, you know, getting called up. They know it. And if you can kind of see the look in the woman's face, you know, she knows it. Unfortunately, this picture got a little cut off, but you'll see down at the bottom, there's a dog. And by her, there's a basket with a kitty cat. And the kitty cat has an interesting story too.
Yes, it does. When we first opened in the front part of the museum, being a former school teacher, I had a little place with a library and a place for kids to come and read books and write letters to veterans that I would send to our veterans hospital and things like that. So one day I'm sitting there and up in the front, and this little boy comes in. This little boy would come in just about every Saturday to just pick up a book and sit there and read. One day he comes in with a bag in his hand and he says, "Hey, Barb, I have something here for you." And he holds his bag up. He goes, "Do you think this will fit in Grandma's yarn basket?" And it was just a little bitty ceramic little kitty cat. And it's like, it was just perfect. And it's exactly what Grandma needed.
It really was. And I think, again, this kind of displays to me my family. I can see that, you know, my grandparents or my dad's, you know, grandparents even or something. I can see for World War One. It would have happened, and it would happen like that. And the fact that this child would come in, because there was something about this museum, and there's a separate little area where you can just take a little rest and sit down in a chair, and it's right near this flag on the right. And for them to just come in, this child to come in and just sit down and read and look through the museum. Now, if you have kids and you force them through a museum, you know that they're not really paying attention. So this child would come in and he actually looked. through the museum and found a niche, a spot that he wanted to contribute to. That to me as a mom is a really, really big deal. So these were some of my favorite. Okay, now the top picture.
Okay, so that display is for local Lewis County Vietnam War veteran whose name is on our monument outside, and that is for Mr. George Henry. And I get a little choked up.
See, I thought when I asked you the question at the beginning, you know, which one makes people get choked up? I was thinking the room. You know, if you're in the reflection room, I was thinking that. But I will tell you that as we went through this museum, Barb said, "You all read this because I'm going around the corner too." So.
Yes, that's the Joe Brady story, which is huge. And yes, I can't read and I can't tell that story. I can do the introduction, then I have to go away. That probably, if there was a thing
that's the one
the room is special. But the picture you have there of Mr. George Henry. See the picture that's in the picture frame?
Yeah.
That is not George Brady. I mean, not George Brady. That is not George Henry. Yeah. That's actually a picture of a tattoo that his nephew has tattooed to his leg of Mr. George Henry. So yeah, those are his medals and his boots. A pair of his boots, but the picture is a tattoo.
And I want to point out again, the family donated all these items.
Yes.
So I think that's just really kind of amazing as you walk through. Some of it is your collection from you and your husband, and some of it you acquired, Sergeant Vowed, and a lot of it is just people have donated as well.
Exactly.
So,
one of our things that we talk about is that my husband told a reporter one time, said that anybody can put up a canteen and call themselves a military museum.
They can.
But we deal in the personal. When people bring their things in and sit and tell me their stories, that becomes part of my heart. And when I go around and do a tour, in addition to doing the history, I throw in personal stories, and that's where the emotion comes in, and that's why you get a different feeling when you walk in.
And the goal is to recognize every West Virginian that has served.
If at all possible, as long as we have room, we'll at least have room for a picture. Our display space, you were there, it's getting tight.
It is.
Yeah. But we'll always make room for a picture.
And so if I have something that I want to donate, because I know that it's just not going to go to anybody, I should reach out to you first, probably. And I know my producer dropped the link of your website. So definitely reach out. I know a lot of museums have people that just show up, and that's okay too, but it's best to reach out and to give a little bit of time to look at things. And I know that you like to do appointments for the museum. So you can schedule the time, and everybody might think that's a little strange, because I remember when we first reached out to you, and we were going to make an appointment no matter what, because we knew we wanted some extra one-on-one time to kind of talk to you about this and talk to you about joining us on this webcast. But after we got probably 15 minutes in, I was like, this is a brilliant idea that you have, because Barb has all the stories. I mean, when you go to museum, you've got the option here to just, get a short introduction and go through at your own pace. But don't do that. Don't do that. Let Barb take you through the museum, because there's so many items. I'm going to guess it's got to be over 10,000 items. It's well over that, because if you think of all the photos and all the trinkets and all the medals and all the artifacts. And when she would take us through, we could actually hear those stories, those personal stories. And you know why that's important? When people are dropping off their artifacts and information, they're telling her the stories. So she's the storyteller. She's keeping it alive. And that's why it's so important. Though I know that my programs are geared a lot towards genealogy in Appalachia as well. That's why these little museums are so important to me, why I wanted to showcase this one, especially being from a military family. We've got to remember these stories because once we're gone, they're gone. And we already know the artifacts could be gone if they didn't donate them to you. We would never know that. So I appreciate everything that you and your husband have done for this museum. I know that it's a tremendous amount of work. I see you every day working. So I do know, and I will let you in on a little secret. Both of us were up at 3 a.m. this morning. So working as well. So I know the work that you put into it. And I want to thank both of you and your husband Ron for doing this. It's a treasure. It's really a treasure. And I would also like to mention that if you would like to donate to the operating fund for the museum, please check out the website that my producer dropped down. It's also going to be in the description down below. This is a self-funded museum. This is not a museum that's getting, big funds from somebody else or somewhere else or some funds coming automatically every month like clockwork. That's not the case. And if you're anywhere around West Virginia, especially central West Virginia, right off the interstate, so close, very, very close, right on exit 99 off 79. If you're a snowbird or anything like that, definitely check it out. It's fantastic. And I will tell you, I loved it because it's right next to the firehouse in town. And every time I go to Weston, I go walk into the firehouse to see my dad on one of the group pictures as well. So it was like a twofer for me to go in. One last thing that I wanted to just mention to everybody real quick, and let me see if I can bring this up. My computer's being a little weird, is my connection to this museum really came up about 2 weeks ago. If you were watching my webcast, I did a webcast on Hillbilly Highway. When I came in, I saw Frank Craig. I knew Frank Craig. I knew Frank Craig, but I didn't know how he related to me. My uncle did, actually. My uncle knew exactly. So this gentleman is my dad's uncle. And he has a pretty good display there. He was in Korea, he was in Vietnam, and he was in World War II. So I came home after my trip to Appalachia, came home and, went up to 𝗪𝗧cie and created just this little profile for him. And I thought that would be about it. Well, 2 weeks ago, week and a half ago, I did a Hillbilly Highway presentation for 𝗪𝗧cie for their symposium. And I invited my mom. And my mom we were talking, and the thing that I mentioned to her is, okay, so you were leaving Weston, West Virginia, where this museum is, and you and Dad decided to take my two brothers, because I wasn't a thing yet, to Baltimore. And I'm like, where did you live? How did you did you find a place? Because no internet, you can't just back in the 60s. And she said, no, Frank. We stayed at Frank's. And I go, Frank who? And we started talking because I mostly work on her side of the family. And she goes, Frank Craig. And I was like, oh my gosh, I was just there 2 weeks ago. So this is the connection. And I try to tell Appalachians this all the time. And I try to tell everybody who thinks they're not Appalachian, you're connected to Appalachia in more ways than you think. And this was a special find for me to also see that he left on the Hillbilly Highway first, and he did it through the military. He left and he helped my family, which is deeply personal to me, that he helped my family get to a point of a better life, money, away from starvation and away from the coal mines. So I want to thank you for, giving me the moment to pause in front of his display as well. Again, his immediate family donated it. And I would also like to say, as we close up, I believe the promise has been kept and continuing to be kept.
Thank you. Yep. It's my husband's promise. It's my passion, and it's a huge life lesson, if anything else.
I agree. And one other quick thing, that if you do visit, make sure to let me know, because I might be there at the same time and I'll go with you. But it is free to go in. Donations are appreciated though, but it is free. I would say, how much time should somebody leave to visit?
Depending on what you want to get out of it,
Yeah.
give yourself at least an hour. We have people that we have folks that'll come through and walk through it like in 10 minutes time and walk out and not even say, hey, thanks or whatever. But if you really wanted to delve into it and feel the passion and feel the promise and even just get into the history, at least an hour. Yeah.
Well, she's being,
I can
you're
keep
being
you
low.
for hours.
I know, you're being low. I actually, I was there for hours. I thought I'd be there an hour. I was there for hours. Another brother was waiting for me at the restaurant. I pulled him out of the restaurant and told him to come meet me here so he could see it. And then we went back the next day because we missed something. So definitely that's how impressive this museum is. So Barb, thank you. Thank you for joining us, and thank you, Ron, for creating this opportunity for us. And if anybody has any questions, please reach out to the museum or reach out to me. If you are interested in helping us with the Appalachia Project on 𝗪𝗪𝗃, document over 1,300 West Virginians in the military, please reach out to me. I just got a little bit of chills there. Please reach out to me because we could use your help. We want these stories to continue. The museum has a historian, and we would love to follow the historian's lead and let the historian kind of feed us what information that we should need and have. So thank you guys again, and I will see you next time. Thanks, Barb.
Thank you, Sandy. Thank you for the opportunity.